Okay, so I would say for choosing paint colors, it's very important. And I would say one of the most important things about it is that you can't just have like a universal paint color that works in every space. I know people have favorites. I definitely have favorites too, even favorite neutrals. But depending on what you're using in the room, the amount of natural light, the amount of artificial light that you're adding, the paint color can look really different from space to space. So I think more important than anything else is sampling and making sure that you're, checking the colors in the space where it's going to go, and that you're checking it at all different times of day because the lighting's going to be different. And I've seen people, look at a swatch and they think it looks great. They love the color. They see it in a friend's house and they decide to paint an entire space only to figure out in their space it looks like it has pink undertones, which they didn't see in the other space. So I think paint is powerful, whether you want it to be something that goes away and not detract from other things in the room, or if you want it to be more of the impact in the room. Origami white was a color that I had used on the main house, and this is a pool house. And so I wanted the two to relate to each other, even though they were very different. This had brick walls, stone floors, so it felt very different than the main house. But origami white is a great white that has kind of cooler gray undertones. And you can see in that image, I used a gray stain on the ceiling and the fire rock pavers, which have a gray hue on the floor. And I was using lots of blues and cooler tones. And so I wanted to pick a white that didn't go too cool, but definitely had some of the gray undertones. And origami white is one generally that I sample in whites. I usually try to sample a gray white, a warm white, and then something that's a little bit in between the two in spaces, just so I can figure out which kind of direction from cool to warm I want to go, and then fine tune it from there. Sherwin Williams Alabaster is my current favorite white. If I had to pick a white that I go to most often, I like it because I most of the time tend to like a white with a little warmth. And I feel like alabaster does a good job of working in a lot of different spaces. You look at it next to a bright white piece of paper, you'll see that it has a lot of warmth. But on a wall, it doesn't appear yellow, which I think sometimes when you go with a warm white, you can get kind of a dingy undertone. It doesn't have that at all. It's still very crisp, but without the coldness of, a hospital white. I actually use this color both interior and exterior, and like it for both. It's a beautiful gray green, and it looks good in so many different spaces. I loved it in this room. This was the rest of the house, living spaces were kind of open to each other, and we used one paint color throughout all of those spaces. So we were looking for something to kind of create this little special space, study, lounge area for the family. It has the opposite wall has a TV on it. We did blackout drapes so that it could be kind of moody and they could sit in there either as an adult space. You can see there's a wet bar in there, or as a child kind of movie space. So we wanted it to be able to go both ways and feel moody. And we used the dark soapstone. So I wanted something rich. And then you can see there's kind of a gold ceiling wallpaper. So that was the brightness, but I wanted to balance it with something that worked well with gold and bright tones and brass. And Night Owl, I think, does a great job. It works well with bright, warm colors and also with blacks. So that is a pool house, and I actually did the main house in the same color. It was previously white for a short period of time, and the inside of this space is all white. All the walls are white. This is the one that the interior is the origami white. So I wanted something to balance and ground the pool house, and also to have a little bit of a blue hue to work with the water and pool and to pop against the green. And I sampled a lot of the same thing. Sampled, I would say three. I usually sample about three colors. I sampled three colors, and this was clearly the winner. It's just a beautiful, rich color and looks really pretty with the black and the steel, and also, but with the, white shutters and white outdoor furniture, there's a nice contrast with a crispness that it creates. Gray owl is just a really pretty soft gray that I feel like, again, works well with a lot of people's homes, especially in a renovation style situation where we're not changing anything. If they've already got kind of a base wall color, it's a good cabinetry color when they want something other than white, but the space doesn't really allow for a boldness that you would get from a color with a lot of saturation. So it gives a hint of color to make the cabinetry feel special, but it's not so much saturation that it's kind of detracting. This kitchen is open to a living space, and we were trying to keep the palette kind of calm, but didn't want to go with, a typical white color. We wanted a little bit more than that, but not to go with like a fully, saturated color. This is a really good, I would say, neutral color that has a little bit of pigment to it so that the walls don't feel, no one would describe them as white, but the pigment is very, very soft, that you also definitely wouldn't describe it necessarily as a color. Gray mist is a nice name for it, because it is just like a misting of color, and it adds like a nice palette with a little bit more warmth to it than you would get from a white wall. That when you're selecting a color, the sheen is very important. So when you see a swatch or get a swatch, or even if you get a sample and you get it in a flat or a semi-gloss, but you're planning on doing high gloss, for example, you need to sample it in the sheen that you're going to purchase, because the color gets more vibrant the more you go up on the gloss scale. So if you pick it from a flat card and then you paint something high gloss, it's going to be a lot more vibrant than what you thought. And I've made that mistake before, and the color can look very different, and you could be disappointed, especially if you're trying to match it to fabrics. So it's really important to always sample in the sheen that you're going to use. I'd say if you're doing cabinetry, if it's new cabinetry, most cabinet shops will provide a sample using their finish of the color and for you to approve. And I would always ask for that, because they buy, large commercial quantities of the paint, and the color could be a little off, or the sheen could be different than what you expected, especially if they do a spray finish. So versus a hand painted finish. So I think that would be one thing that I would always kind of suggest to people, is just to make sure that you sample is the best, and making sure that you're sampling enough, 2 or 3, so that you can see the differences between things in a space and with different lighting.